The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NBA.
Russell Westbrook is a Sacramento King, and I'm seeing one question above anything else. Why?
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast.
Russell Westbrook, that's who we're here to talk about. Finally, it happened. We heard rumors and conversations and talk all summer long. Russell Westbrook to the Kings. It was the Kings. It was Russell Westbrook. It was this partnership, this agreement. It seemed like it was going to happen. And there was all of this delay, and the money was unsure because there's not a lot of money available. And how much could they give Russ? And they couldn't free up more money than they were able to this summer. They couldn't move Malik or Devin Carter or the Jonathan Kuminga situation. There was all this stuff in the way of the Kings and Russell Westbrook finally agreeing to a contract, coming together. And we finally got to a point where the Kuminga situation resolved itself. The Warriors and Kuminga were able to work out their deal, so the Kings fell out of that. And we got all the way to October 15th with the season starting less than a week from now. For the Kings, the season starts a week from tonight, but the NBA season begins less than a week from now. And here is Russell Westbrook, still not on the team, looking around going, yo, do I have to go international to play? Apparently he had an offer of around $10 million reportedly to go and play in China. So there's more money available for him to play internationally, but it sounds like he wasn't too keen on the idea of going and playing in China. There was always this interest in playing for the Sacramento Kings since the days even before training camp, free agency opened. We were talking about this here on Locked On Kings earlier this summer. So it appears maybe the fact that nobody else was calling in the NBA and it was either China or take the money that the Kings are able to offer, it appears that ran its course. And ultimately, according to reports, Russell Westbrook and the Kings have agreed to a deal today. Matt, why? How in the world does Russell make sense for the Sacramento Kings? Russell Westbrook now makes the Sacramento Kings the third oldest team in the NBA. Why are the Kings prioritizing Westbrook? Why would the Kings spend the money and the roster spot to bring Russell Westbrook here? It doesn't make sense. It just feels like more of throwing together a hodgepodge roster of names that were especially big 5+ years ago and hoping it works here in Sacramento. I understand those of you who feel that way. Hopefully this podcast today will make you feel a little bit better, or at the very least give you a little more of an understanding of why Russell Westbrook was enticing for the Sacramento Kings. Because you have to understand, there is an off-court identity part of the conversation, and there's an on-court basketball player part of the conversation. And I'm telling you, and this might already make you wrinkle your nose in disgust, the off-court identity part is what is most important here. That's why we're going to start with that. And again, you might be going, my instant reaction might be, if we're talking about off the court being more important than on the court, then I already know this isn't a good signing. Hear me out. Because we've talked about this a million times since Scott Perry's first press conference after he was hired as the Kings general manager at the start of the offseason. This season, first and foremost, is about establishing a new identity and a new culture in Sacramento. You're probably sick and tired of hearing me say it, but I'm going to continue to say it because that is what the reality is here in Sacramento. That does not mean that wins and losses aren't important. That does not mean that what happens with the team on the floor doesn't matter. Quite the opposite. The Kings on the court need to be establishing. We need to see a difference between now and end of this season with how this team plays. We need to be able to know very clearly how the Sacramento Kings play basketball, who the Kings are as a basketball team. Because going into game one of the season in a week, We know what they want to be, but we still don't know who they truly are. We still don't. And we probably won't know for weeks or maybe even months into the season. They are identifying or developing this identity that Doug Christie and Scott Perry have come together and agreed, like, this is how we're going to play. We're going to play up tempo. We're going to be a defense first. We're going to be a physical team, a get in your face team, a take no nonsense team. And a lot of those traits I just said fit Russell Westbrook perfectly. Russ is exactly the type of player to establish this identity in Sacramento. He's not the best player to establish this identity, but he's exactly the type of player. There's a difference. One thing I want to address right off the bat, because I've seen it a lot, I've been seeing it a lot since Russ became a conversation, and it's not true. Russell Westbrook is not a cancer to the Kings. He's not a cancer to a locker room. It is not true. I have talked to many people in organizations, those Locked On hosts or other media members who have covered Russell Westbrook from most recently in Denver to all the stops that he has bounced around. Russell Westbrook is not a cancer. It is consistent. Everybody's told me, no, Russ does not come into a situation and make it toxic and make it horrible. Russell Westbrook is not going to cause the Sacramento Kings to revert back to the cancerous awfulness of last season that they went through, the toxicity. It's not going to be because of Russell Westbrook. It's not like he's coming in to rough anything up in that sense. That's not true. I don't believe that. I've never had any indication to believe that. I think that narrative or that reputation is false and it's silly. But I understand how people get there because who Russell Westbrook is, he's a jerk. He's an a-hole. He's a guy who's going to speak his mind. There is a very significant difference between being that and being toxic. Draymond Green, as much as we do not like Draymond here in Sacramento for obvious reasons, Draymond Green is not toxic. He's an a-hole. He's a jerk that has been perfect for the Warriors for their entire dynasty. How many times over the years have we talked about the Kings need a dog? The Kings need someone who will light a fire. The Kings need someone who will get in somebody's face. Cue Russell Westbrook's music. And Russ is not just going to come in here to stand up for his teammates and get in the faces of opponents if they try anything silly. When the Houston Rockets come into town and try and do their pushing and shoving Ime Udoka ways, or Draymond Green comes to town and tries to get in somebody's face. Yeah, Russ is going to be the guy to get involved in that to an extent, of course. Hopefully Dennis Schroeder will too. But Russell Westbrook is also going to be the guy in the practice facility to, I don't know if he'd physically do this, but for lack of a better term, grab somebody by the collar, pull them in and go, you need to lock the F in. You need to buy in. I need more from you because you're going through the motions. Lock in. Go 110% because that's who Russell Westbrook is. Russ demands 100% effort because he has always played with 100% effort. We'll get to the on-the-court stuff and how that 100% effort can lead to erratic, crazy, chaotic on-court moments and mistakes that are going to happen. 100%. There are going to be mistakes that Russell Westbrook makes when he suits up and plays for the Sacramento Kings. Of course. And there are concerns about fit and like floor spacing stuff. All of that is true, and we will get to that. But the identity is what is most important. And Russell Westbrook, like Doug Christie, wants to punch first, not react to getting punched. Russ punches first. Russ will help set a standard here in Sacramento. Russ will hold his teammates to that standard that Doug Christie and Scott Perry are setting better than anybody else on this roster. He can do it way better than DeMar DeRozan, way better than Zach LaVine, way better than Domantas Sabonis. Russ is going to be the guy to hold people to that standard better. But he is also, in my opinion, like the perfect combo with DeMar. Not basketball-wise, but mentorship-wise, motivational-wise. DeMar DeRozan has already taught so many people in Sacramento about what it is to be a pro. DeMar DeRozan is a champion of mental health. He wrote a book about it, his life experiences. He's going to be a guy that's phenomenal for Neat Clifford or Keegan Murray or anybody to go to. And they already have gone through to work their way through the roller coaster of life in the NBA and expectations and pressures as an NBA player. DeMar is perfect for that. But DeMar DeRozan, while he can hold people accountable in his own way, DeMar DeRozan is not going to do what Russell Westbrook does. The Kings want to play with a fire. The Kings want to play with an intensity. The Kings want that fire and intensity to burn throughout all aspects of this organization with how they approach practice, how they approach film study, how they approach daily life as a Sacramento King. Russell Westbrook helps establish that and fits that. Russell Westbrook immediately becomes the best extension of Doug Christie in that locker room, on that practice floor, on the NBA floor that the Kings have. That is who Russell Westbrook is. That is what Russell Westbrook brings. And that is why Russell Westbrook has been on Scott Perry's radar since the beginning. Yes, there are basketball concerns, and we're going to get to those in just a second here. Will it work perfectly on the basketball floor? No, it won't. Is Russell Westbrook the difference between the Kings being a play-in team and a playoff team? No, he's not. But Russell Westbrook is the type of guy that can lay the foundation that the Kings can build upon in the years to come. What Russell Westbrook is the guy to set the standard. So Neek, Keegan, Keon, Devin, all these young guys who are hopefully, many of them hopefully part of Scott Perry's future, they understand it. They learn it. It becomes part of who they are. It becomes the standard. It becomes the expectation that Russ can then pass the torch to those guys to where they can hold the newcomers, the new trade additions, the new rookies, new draft picks of the future. They can hold them to that standard. We talk a lot about Heat culture and how Heat culture has been able to surpass the constraints of time and carry year after year, decade after decade in Miami. It's because they have set a standard that guys like Udonis Haslem, who are there forever, held everybody to. Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley holds everybody to that standard in Miami. And that's why it's lasted as long as it has. Russell Westbrook is someone who can really, truly build that foundation here in Sacramento.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Jason Kidd signs a contract extension with the Dallas Mavericks. It matters for the Mavericks, but is he the right coach to lead them to the next NBA Finals? Jason Kidd and the Dallas Mavericks agreed to a multi-year contract extension. According to Mark Stein, Kidd drew interest from the Lakers and the Knicks. Who talked about this for like multiple weeks over the offseason and people were upset about it?
First I've heard about that.
Over the past 2 summers, and Dallas has now responded with a contract extension both times that Jason Kidd had interest from other parties. I'm just going to answer the question straight up. Do we care? Yes, we care about this. Because this is what was going to happen all the time. We said this, that Jason Kidd, when he needs a contract extension, a team will emerge that is interested in Jason Kidd and his services. And that will happen. If Jason Kidd doesn't have a contract in front of him, things will happen. Things will all of a sudden pop up. And I don't exactly know what else he would have done after this, but this was always going to end in some kind of Jason Kidd contract extension. And honestly, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there was a path that there wouldn't be a contract extension. I thought I put this in our our Locked On Mavs Insider program today in a text. I was like, I thought this was going to happen like a month ago, and then it didn't happen. And then it was just like, all right, this is kind of weird. It didn't happen, didn't go through, whatever it was. And then we're starting to get closer to the season. Media day gets there. He still doesn't have an extension. There's media day and like the player interviews and stuff, but then there's always like the little sub narratives that's going around, team employees to other media people that has different sources. So we're all just kind of talking with each other about different things. And that was one of the few things that I talked about with a couple of people of like, hey, what's going on with this kid extension? Like, still hasn't happened.
Yeah.
And at that point it was like, I don't know what's going on. Like we could be going to the season with no extension. And it's like, hey, if there was no extension that was going to happen, then I was like, all right, we're looking at next summer as kid's going to be looking elsewhere again. And it's probably going to be resulting in him barring a finals, visit or something like that. He could be looking elsewhere next summer. But then bam, this news came out today and new extension for Jason Kidd. And honestly, I think the Mavs need some stability. They've had so much change, and however you feel about Jason Kidd, the players like him, people around the league, as far as other players like him and respect him and playing for a coach. I think was it D'Angelo Russell? Maybe it was D'Lo that referenced like whenever you're coming here and you're playing for the Mavericks and he's like, you got a guy like Jason Kidd that's played before and been this like all-time great player.
About structure.
Yeah, so it's like this extension gives some stability, gives some structure for these players now, for some players that are looking to come here in the future. And so I get it. And there's no questioning and wondering and stuff. Obviously, if the season goes south and things go wrong and it's just not working out and all this stuff, we've seen, extensions not mean a ton, but this does give some vote of confidence to Jason Kidd moving forward.
If it was any other coach that was not Jason Kidd, who we have a history with and is like as a coach, and the Kittle finger nickname where he was like doing weird things with the Nets and with the Bucks and things like that. If it was not Jason Kidd, we would look at the coach that coached last year's team, that led that team through everything they did and how they worked their butts off and played their butts off every single night. We'd look at that coach and be like, these guys are going out there and ride and dying for this coach right now. That's what we would be saying about the coach, right? And I don't think I gave him enough credit for that last year, because if it was a different coach, I would have been given. Like if it was a brand new up and coming coach, like Jordan Ott, who just got hired by the Suns or whatever. Like we would give him all the credit because those guys are playing hard for the coach. Because who else were they playing hard for, right? Like Kyrie was out, maybe Anthony Davis only played 9 games, so. Those guys were playing hard for him. And honestly, that's all you want to get from a coach, is to get guys to play hard and to get them to play hard, play in line, and play together. And I think Jason Kidd has done all three of those things with every team that he's had with the Mavericks so far. And
you sound like you're some like coach from like a Disney movie.
Well, and also like I was the guy right before the playoff run that said that they should move on from Jason Kidd. What was that, 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
And it has been completely different since then. He has led a team to the NBA Finals, and a team that really stepped up defensively, even though they didn't have the best personnel to do so, and they did. And then he led the team through last season and all the craziness that was that, and they played really hard. And like I think Jason Kidd has done a good job with this team. And now this is a brand new team, and he's getting another chance. And the Mavs are investing in Jason Kidd for that stability, is what you just talked about.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a results based business too. It's not like you just hired a guy 3 or 4 years ago that has all these relationships and there's been no success. He's went to 2 conference finals and he's been to an NBA finals. And wait, you want to discredit that, don't you?
No, I just thought of something else. Would you rather have waited them? Because the contract he was in right now would have ended after next season. Would you rather them like run it out this year and next year to see what he does with this team? Because I think there's going to be some comments that are like, and I've already seen some of them in some of the videos that I've posted so far about this. Well, it was just because of Luka that he made it to the Western Conference Finals and the Finals. Would you rather him like seeing Jason Kidd coach a team that was not Luka based first and see if he could be successful with that team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because this is a new challenge for him here, right? I mean, he said before, I think it was before that game in Fort Worth, of like someone asked him about this new team, new roster. And he's like, you play to the strengths of your roster. And for his whole time here in Dallas, he's had this offense and team built around one player for the most part. You bring Kyrie, there's good supporting pieces, but it's like now you have this team. They're rebuilding everything. An offense, it's defensive focused. It's more size out there on the floor. It's just completely different than what he's been coaching before. So, and I think he's excited for it. I think it's been documented out there that, kid, I don't even know where to go. No,
what's been documented? What's out there?
No, I think he's, I think he's going to really enjoy. I think he's really looking forward to this roster that's ready to compete on defense and this more ball movement and all of that. And so I think that's a part in there. But what I was going to say a while ago, it's not like you hired somebody for all the relationships and you didn't have the stuff to prove it. He did go to a conference finals. He did take him to an NBA finals. So however you feel about Jason Kidd, there's been results there. And now you have a brand new coaching staff with him. You have a brand new different type of roster and all of that. So I think it's a different type of challenge for Kidd and his coaching. We're going to see what Kidd's coaching is all about. I think this year, this is the test to see how good of a coach Kidd is. I get the roster is, there's a lot of good players on the roster and it's a deep roster and all of that, but there's going to be some tough decisions with lineups and styles at times that he's going to be making some tough decisions. And when they lose, everybody's going to be throwing a fit of like, you didn't bring AD back in, or you should have went small. He's so stupid. And like, he's going to get just obliterated every time they lose because there's going to be roster and playing rotation decisions that he could have made, or he could have went a different direction. So I guess the question I throw back to you is, would you rather have Jason Kidd or Giannis?
Coaching the team?
Let's go back to the Brad Stevens or Giannis.
Brad Stevens, the Chris Mannings.
Chris Mannings, baby.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast.
I want to look at Willie Green. Is he on the hot seat? Is he not? And I'm going to tell you why, no matter what, he should be. And why it's actually not for the reasons that you think. Plus, Kevon Looney was injured. We'll break that down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And become an everyday. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So let's get right into this one. This topic came to me as I was reading rankings, starting with Tom Ziller and his Good Morning It's Basketball newsletter, which I really love. And that is where he ranked all of the coaches on the hot seat. And Willie Green came in at number 3. This is also kind of like solidified by CBS Sports and Sam Quinn ranking all of the head coaches 1 through 30. Willie Green coming in at 24. So like just outside of being at the bottom here. I want to read what they both have to say about head coach Willie Green, because look, I truthfully don't know if Willie Green's actually on the hot seat or not. It seems like he has a very good relationship with Joe Dumars. Willie Green, at times, hear me out on this one, has been dealt a bad hand. So many injuries. How can we actually know if he's a good head coach or not? But I'm going to tell you why, despite all that, he should be on the hot seat. So here's what Tom Ziller has to say. Quote, I am on the record writing that the Pelicans could be pretty good. However, if not, it's hard to imagine Willie Green surviving the season. He's had 4 years in New Orleans and a lot of tumult around him, from David Griffin saying things most GMs wouldn't say, to Zion Williamson doing things most star players wouldn't do, to some wild trades. And now he's a new boss in Joe Dumars. If history is a guide, New Orleans probably has to be at 500 or better, or has to be at 500 in December for Green to avoid getting bounced here. The thing is, I think Green's a good coach who will get another job in a better resource situation pretty quickly. James Borrego is Green's associate head coach. He's been a head coach twice in the NBA and is broadly seen as someone who will get another head coaching shot, end quote. Here's what Sam Quinn has to say. Quote, Willie Green deserves some measure of sympathy. He's had a healthy team for, 3 months? The Pelicans were good during that brief stretch of the 23-24 season. Otherwise, injuries have doomed his tenure in New Orleans. Still, he hasn't helped matters lately. The Pelicans never shoot threes. That was true even when they had the NBA's best shooting coach in Fred Vinson. He never quite figured out how to get Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram to coexist, and a lot of their bad habits persisted under his watch. It seems notable that the Pelicans did not allow James Borrego to interview as an associate head coach for the Knicks this offseason. They were under no obligation to. It would have been a lateral move, and there's no defined industry standard on that front, but teams will reasonably often allow assistants to move in the best interests of their career, and Borrego could have sold himself as a future head coach far more easily on a winning Knicks team than he will be on the rebuilding Pelicans. Yet the Pelicans held on to Borrego. It's hard not to read that as the Pelicans wanted to keep a potential interim coach or even permanent replacement in the building, end quote. Both those say Willie Green has had things outside of his control that could potentially be holding him back. And I do truthfully agree with that. I don't actually know if we've ever seen how good Willie Green could be. But when you watched that third quarter against Houston on Tuesday night, and it was just like, that immediate surge by Houston to get a 17-point lead, looking like there was no plan, some weird lineups out there that just make no sense. Jose Alvarado and Jeremiah Fears, you can't play those two together. You had bad half-court offense where it was just at times Herb Jones isolation three-pointers, which it should just never be. Just no plan, right? It brought back all of the stuff of oh man, we're just doing this all again, aren't we? It's just all the same again, and we're kind of tired of seeing that. That's the reason why, even if Willie Green isn't actually on the hot seat, he should be. This team, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the third segment too when we get into Kevon Looney's injury, you just can't keep running it back. You can't keep doing the same thing. And Joe Dumars said that. And they're taking a bit of a different approach here. But it goes beyond you just can't keep running it back. This is about something that I've been hammering. It's about perception. You need to show that you care. You being, whether it's Gail Benson, whether it's Joe Dumars, whether it's just everyone kind of associated with the team, you have to show that not making the playoffs consistently is not okay. You do that by making moves, even if they're a little bit drastic. They need to change the perception about how people view this team. Immediately in that third quarter on social media and even on the comments here on YouTube, people are just oh, this is the same thing all over again. Nothing's ever going to change. Even if things are actually different, you don't want people thinking that. You don't want your fan base thinking about that at all. But that is something that is just kind of out there. That's not great. You need to change the perception around this team. So if you are 500 or worse, right, you have to make a change. You have to do something that says being mediocre and just making the play-in tournament isn't enough for this franchise. That's not what we want for our fans. You have to do something different. So even if Willie Green is a good coach, and Tom Ziller seems to think he is, right, you have to make that determination that it's just not working here. We have to do something differently. This is not about, the human aspect should factor into this. Don't get me wrong, it should. But at the same point, you got to win basketball games. This is a results-oriented business, and for whatever reasons, most don't have to do with head coach Willie Green. It just hasn't quite worked from what we wanted to see. So you've got to make things different here. And so I've been saying I would be using the in-season tournament, the NBA Cup, as the measuring stick. If you make the quarterfinals of that, so if you get out of the knockout stages, good. That's what I want to see from this team. Though you're playing against good teams. You got the Lakers, the Clippers, and I think the Mavs in there too in their group. If you get out of that group, that's saying something. The Lakers and Clippers are projected to be playoff teams. The Mavs are kind of somewhere in the Pelicans range, maybe a little bit above them. So if you're winning those games and you kind of go on a bit of a run there, all right, it shows that you're competing with some of those top teams. If you're 500, you don't have a first round pick next year. You've got to at least do something to try and get a little bit more juice out of this team here. And so you're going to need to make a change. This was one of the reasons why they brought James Borrego in to help with the offense and things. And you haven't seen it really work out. Look, I don't know if Brandon Ingram and Zion could coexist, but you didn't really see some things that you wanted to see there. And I'll get into the Brandon Ingram situation in the next segment because I do think that criticism is a little bit unfair against head coach Willie Green. But you got to try and win. Even if it's not actually playoffs or bust this year for New Orleans, you have to try and do that. And so you need to make a change. So even if Willie Green isn't on the hot seat, and again, I don't exactly know if he is or not. We thought he would be last year, and they didn't make a change. Thought he could be the year before that. They didn't make a change. So if that's going to be, whether he is or not, he should be, because if you don't get off to the start that you want, you're just telling your fans this is just how it is. And you can't have people believing in that. You need to instill that people care. And I know that everyone cares about this franchise. I talk to those folks. They do. You also need to do things that show it. And it even might be making a move just to make a move, or a change just to make a change, to kind of hammer that point home. Simple as that. So Willie Green, and again, not a knock on him as a person, needs to be on the hot seat because the perception around this franchise right now is not good, and they need to do something to try and change that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the third segment as we look at Kevon Looney's injury, and then we'll look at also some of the other impacts of that on the team here.